Chapter 2 of the Riddle of the Sands. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Gesine. The Riddle of the Sands by Erskine Childers. Chapter 2 The Dulcibella. That 2 days later I should be found pacing the deck of the Flushing steamer with the ticket for Hamburg in my pocket may seem a strange result, yet not so strange if you have divined my state of mind. You will guess, at any rate, that I was armed with the conviction that I was doing an act of obscure penance, rumours of which might call attention to my lot and perhaps awaken remorse in the right quarter, while it left me free to enjoy myself unobtrusively, in the remote event of enjoyment being possible. The fact was that, at breakfast on the morning after the arrival of the letter, I had still found that inexplicable lightning which I mentioned before, and strong enough to warrant a revival of the pros and cons. An important pro, which I had not thought of before, was that after all it was a good-natured piece of unselfishness to join Davies, for he had spoken of the want of a pal, and seemed honestly to be in need of me. I almost clutched at this consideration. It was an admirable excuse, when I reached my office that day, for a resigned study on the continental Bradshaw, and an order to Carter to unroll a great creaking wall map of Germany and find me Flensburg. The latter labour I might have saved him, but it was good for Carter to have something to do, and his patient ignorance was amusing. With most of the map and what it suggested, I was tolerably familiar, for I had not wasted my year in Germany, whatever I had done or not done since. Its people, history, progress and future had interested me intensely, and I had still friends in Dresden and Berlin. Flensburg recalled the Danish War of '64, and by the time Carter's researches had ended in success, I had forgotten the task set him, and was wondering whether the prospect of seeing something of that lovely region of Schleswig-Holstein, as I knew from hearsay that it was at all to be set against such an uncomfortable way of seeing it, with the season so late, the company so unattractive, and all the other drawbacks which I counted and treasured as proofs of my desperate condition if I were to go. It needed little to decide me, and I think K.'s arrival from Switzerland, offensively sunburnt, was the finishing touch. His greeting was, "Hallo, Carruthers, you there? Thought you had got away long ago. Lucky devil, though, to be going now, just in time for the best driving and the early pheasants. The heat's been shocking out there. Carter, bring me a Bradshaw." An extraordinary book, Bradshaw, turned to from habit, even when least wanted, as men fondle guns and rods in the close season. By lunchtime the weight of indecision had been removed, and I found myself entrusting Carter with a telegram to Davies, P.O. Flensburg. "Thanks. Expect me 9:34 p.m. 26th." Which produced 3 hours later a reply. "Delighted. Please bring a No. 3 Rippingille stove." A perplexing and ominous direction, which somehow chilled me in spite of its subject matter. Indeed, my resolution was continually faltering. It faltered when I turned out my gun in the evening and thought of the grouse it ought to have accounted for. It faltered again when I contemplated the miscellaneous list of commissions sown broadcast through Davies's letter, to fulfil which seemed to make me a willing tool, where my chosen role was that of an embittered exile, or at least a condescending ally. However, I faced the commissions manfully, after leaving the office. At Lancaster's I inquired for his gun, was received coolly, and had to pay a heavy bill, which it seemed to have incurred, before it was handed over. Having ordered the gun and No. 4s to be sent to my chambers, I bought the Raven mixture with that peculiar sense of injury which the prospect of smuggling in another's behalf always entails, and wondered where in the world Carey and Nielsen's was, a firm which Davies spoke of as though it were as well known as the Bank of England or the Stores, instead of specializing in rigging screws, whatever they might be. They sounded important, though, and it would be only polite to unearth them. I connected them with the few repairs, and awoke new misgivings. At the stores I asked for a No. 3 Ripping-Gill stove, and was confronted with a formidable and hideous piece of ironmongery, which burned petroleum in 2 capacious tanks, horribly prophetic of a smell of warm oil. I paid for this miserably, convinced of its grim efficiency, but speculating as to the domestic conditions which caused it to be sent for as an afterthought by telegram. I also asked about the rigging screws in the yachting department, but learnt that they were not kept in stock, that Carey and Nielsen's would certainly have them, and that their shop was in the Minories, in the Far East, meaning a journey nearly as long as to Flensburg and twice as tiresome. They would be shut by the time I got there, so after this exhausting round of duty I went home in a cab, omitted dressing for dinner, an epoch in itself, ordered a chop up from the basement kitchen, and spent the rest of the evening packing and writing, with the methodical gloom of a man setting his affairs in order for the last time. The last of those airless nights passed. The astonished Withers saw me breakfasting at 8, and at 9:30 I was vacantly examining rigging screws with what wits were left me after a sulphurous ride in the underground to Aldgate. I laid great stress on the 3/8 and the galvanism and took them on trust, ignorant as to their functions. For the 11-shilling oilskins I was referred to a villainous den in a back street, which the shopman said they always recommended, and where a dirty and bejewelled Hebrew chaffered with me, beginning at 18 shillings, over 2 reeking orange slabs distantly resembling moieties of the human figure. Their odour made me close prematurely for 14 shillings, and I hurried back, for I was due there at 11, to my office with my 2 disreputable brown paper parcels, one of which made itself so noticeable in the close official air that Carter attentively asked if I would like to have it sent to my chambers, and K. was inquisitive to bluntness about it and my movements. But I did not care to enlighten K., whose comments I knew would be provokingly envious or wounding to my pride in some way. I remembered, later on, the prismatic compass, and wired to the Minories to have one sent at once, feeling rather relieved that I was not present there to be cross-examined as to size and make. The reply was, "Not stocked. Try surveying instrument maker," a reply both puzzling and reassuring, for Davies's request for a compass had given me more uneasiness than anything, while to find that what he wanted turned out to be a surveying instrument was a no less perplexing discovery. That day I made my last précis, and handed over my schedules, Procrustean beds, where unwilling facts were stretched and tortured, and said good-bye to my temporary chief, genial and lenient M., who wished me a jolly holiday with all sincerity. At 7 I was watching a cab packed with my personal luggage and the collection of unwieldy and incongruous packages that my shopping had drawn down to me. 2 deviations after that wretched prismatic compass, which I obtained in the end second-hand, faute de mieux, near Victoria, at one of those showy shops which look like jewellers and are really pawnbrokers, nearly caused me to miss my train. But at 8:30 I had shaken off the dust of London from my feet, and at 10:30 I was, as I have announced, pacing the deck of a Flushing steamer, adrift on this fatuous holiday in the far Baltic. An air from the west, cooled by a midday thunderstorm, followed the steamer as she slid through the calm channels of the Thames estuary, past the cordon of scintillating lightships that watch over the sea roads to the imperial city, like pickets round a sleeping army, and slipped out into the dark spaces of the North Sea. Stars were bright, summer scents from the Kent cliffs mingled coyly with vulgar steamer smells. The summer weather held immutably. Nature, for her part, seemed resolved to be no party to my penance, but to be imperturbably bent on shedding mild ridicule over my wrongs.